I had always believed in maintaining boundaries, especially after marrying my husband Tabo at 44. I had found stability, though not necessarily passion. My marriage was comfortable, predictable, a far cry from the whirlwind romance I had once dreamed of. But life had a way of bringing the unexpected, and in my case, it came in the form of my stepson, Kofi. Kofi was 25, a young man with a quiet demeanor, weighed down by something invisible yet suffocating. From the moment I moved in, I noticed how he kept to himself, avoiding conversations longer than necessary. He had his father's sharp features but carried none of his confidence. Tabo, a man of discipline and high expectations, had always treated Kofi with a firm hand rather than an affectionate one. At first, I didn't pay much attention. It wasn't my place. But there were small things. His hesitation when speaking, the way he seemed to shrink in his father's presence, and the rare moments when his eyes held something that looked a lot like self doubt. I couldn't ignore it. One evening, as I cleared the dinner table, I caught him sitting alone by the kitchen counter, staring at his untouched plate. Tabo had gone to bed early, leaving us in an unfamiliar silence. You barely ate, I said, drying my hands on a towel. He glanced up briefly before looking away. Not hungry? His voice was hollow, like someone carrying the weight of too many unspoken words. I hesitated before sitting down across from him. Something on your mind? For a moment, I thought he would brush me off like always, but instead he sighed. It doesn't matter. It matters if it's bothering you. I pressed gently. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. It's just, I feel like I'm always falling short. No matter what I do, I never measure up. I frowned. Measure up to what? He let out a bitter chuckle. Everything, expectations, standards, the version of me my father wants. I'm supposed to be strong, capable, but I'm not. I overthink everything. I hesitate. I fail, and everyone sees it. His words were heavy, laced with years of frustration and disappointment. I had seen men his age brim with ambition, but Kofi's energy was different. Subdued, hesitant, as if he had been told too many times that he wasn't enough. I leaned forward, my voice steady. You're not a failure, Kofi, he scoffed. You don't know that. I know that because I see you, I said firmly. You don't have to fit into anyone's mold. You're allowed to be yourself. His eyes flickered with something unreadable before he quickly masked it. He stood up, running a hand through his dark hair. Thanks for saying that, he murmured before heading to his room. I watched him go, an unsettling feeling lingering in my chest. It was just a conversation, yet it felt like something had shifted between us. I told myself I was just being kind, that I was doing what any decent person would. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. And that was the part that scared me the most. Over the next few weeks, I found myself noticing Kofi more, not just in passing, but in a way that felt deeper, more intentional. His guarded nature, the way he avoided eye contact, the hesitation in his voice, it all made me wonder how long he had been carrying this burden alone. I wasn't sure what had compelled him to open up to me that night, but I knew one thing. I couldn't just ignore it. One evening, I found him outside on the back porch, staring into the fading sunset. He looked lost in thought, his hands resting on the railing, fingers tense. I hesitated before stepping closer. Long day? I asked softly. He gave a small nod, not turning to look at me. Always is. I leaned against the railing beside him. You don't have to do this alone, you know. Whatever it is you're going through, you can talk to me. His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he would shut me out again. But then he exhaled, his shoulders sagging. It's exhausting, he admitted. Hey, trying to meet expectations that don't even feel like mine. But I don't even know who I am outside of them. There was something heartbreaking about hearing him say that, about realizing how much of himself he had lost in the process of trying to be what others expected. You're more than what people demand of you, I said. You have worth beyond that. He finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. You really believe that? Yes, I answered without hesitation. Something shifted in the way he looked at me then. An unspoken understanding, an almost desperate need to believe what I was telling him. After that night, our conversation became more frequent. Sometimes they were light, filled with teasing remarks about his lack of cooking skills or my terrible taste in television shows. Other times they were heavier, filled with confessions about his past struggles, his fears, his insecurities. The more we talked, the more I realized how much he had been holding back for years. Tabo had always been a provider, but not necessarily a nurturer. Kofi had grown up in a house where achievements were praised but emotions were overlooked. He had never been told that he was enough just as he was. One night, as the storm raged outside, we sat in the dimly lit living room, the soft glow of a lamp casting shadows along the walls. The power had gone out, leaving us in an oddly intimate silence. He sighed, rubbing his hands together. I think this is the first time in years I felt like I could just breathe. I looked at him, something in my chest tightening. You deserve that feeling, Kofi. He met my gaze, his expression unreadable. It's because of you. The air between us shifted, thick with something unspoken. I should have looked away, should have ended the conversation there, but I didn't. Instead, I let the moment linger, let the weight of his words settle in. And that was when I knew I had crossed the line. Tabo began noticing the change before I even admitted it to myself. He wasn't a man who paid attention to small details, but he was observant when it mattered. He started watching the way Kofi and I interacted, the way our conversations carried a familiarity that hadn't been there before. He never voiced his thoughts outright, but I could feel the weight of his suspicion in the way he looked at me. One evening, as I set the table for dinner, Tabo leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You spend a lot of time with Kofi. There was no accusation in his tone, but the implication was there. I kept my voice even. He needed someone to talk to. Tabo scoffed. He has me. I met his gaze. The words I wanted to say caught in my throat. But we both knew the truth. Kofi had never been able to talk to him. They had a strained relationship built on expectations rather than understanding. Dinner was quiet that night, tension thick in the air. Kofi barely spoke, his eyes flickering between his father and me, sensing the shift. When Tabo excused himself early, I stayed behind to clear the table. Kofi lingered, hesitant. I should go, he said, but he didn't move. I turned to him, searching his face. Are you okay? He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what to do anymore. I knew what he meant. The connection between us had become undeniable, a force neither of us had asked for but couldn't seem to ignore. It wasn't about attraction. It was deeper than that. Something built on understanding and vulnerability. Can't keep doing this, I said softly. He looked at me, eyes dark with emotion. I don't want to lose you. My chest tightened. You're not losing me, Kofi. He shook his head. But I am, aren't I? We barely talk now. You pull away every time I try to reach out. I force myself to stay firm, because it was the right thing to do. His expression hardened. The right thing. The right thing is pretending none of this happened, pretending I don't feel this way. I swallowed hard. We have to. The hurt in his eyes nearly broke me. He nodded slowly, stepping back. I get it. You regret it. I opened my mouth to speak, but he was already walking away. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, guilt pressing down on me. I had convinced myself I was just helping him, that my intentions had been pure. But somewhere along the way, I had let the lines blur. The next morning, Kofi was gone. Tabo barely acknowledged it, muttering something about him needing space. But I knew the truth. He had left because of me, because I had let him believe he was alone again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly lost. Days passed, then weeks. The house felt emptier without Kofi. Tabo carried on as if nothing had changed, burying himself in work, barely acknowledging his son's absence. But I noticed every time I passed by Kofi's room, the silence pressed down on me. I wondered where he had gone, whether he was okay, whether he hated me for pushing him away. One evening, as I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, my phone buzzed. My heart stopped when I saw his name. Kofi, can we talk? For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me feared reopening a door I had struggled to close. But another part, the part that had never truly let go, knew I had to see him. We met at a quiet cafe outside the city. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, hands clasped together. He looked different, tired but resolute. When he saw me, he gave a small nod. I didn't think you'd come, he admitted. I sat across from him, my hands resting in my lap. I wasn't sure if I should. He studied me for a long moment. I needed time to think about everything. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. I was angry when I left, he admitted. I felt abandoned, like I was finally starting to feel something real, and then it was ripped away. A lump formed in my throat. I never wanted to hurt you, Kofi. I know, he said, and I get it now. You did what you thought was right. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, he sighed. I realized something while I was away. I kept looking for someone to tell me who I was, waiting for validation, but I can't do that anymore. I need to figure it out for myself. Pride swelled in my chest. That's the person I always knew you could be. He gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. It still hurts, he admitted. But I think for the first time, I understand why it had to be this way. I reached across the table, my fingers brushing his lightly. You're going to be okay, Kofi. He nodded. Yeah, I think so. As I walked away that night, a strange mix of emotions settled over me. Relief, sadness, hope. I had lost something precious. But in the process, Kofi had found something even more important himself. And that had to be enough.